My mother-in-law's voice carried through the whole restaurant before she even sat down. "You don't mind helping set up the rehearsal dinner, right?" she said, already pulling out her chair, already reaching for the breadbasket. My husband's youngest brother was getting married in 6 weeks, and somehow, in the 2 seconds it took her to ask that question, I had already been assigned a role no one bothered to describe to me yet. I smiled. I always smiled. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me, where are you listening from? Because I have a feeling some of you already know exactly how this story ends. And when you've heard all of it, tell me, what would you have done if you were me?" I want to start further back because this didn't begin with a wedding. It began the Thanksgiving I brought a homemade pie that took me 3 hours to make. My sister-in-law set it on the back counter, behind the store-bought ones. Nobody touched it. On the drive home, my husband said the family just didn't like walnuts. I had never put walnuts in it. It began the Christmas Eve. I stayed up until 2 in the morning wrapping gifts for 12 people because my mother-in-law's wrist was acting up. She posted a photo the next morning of the beautifully wrapped presents under the tree with the caption, "Look what I put together for my family." I was tagged nowhere. I was in the photo nowhere. I was in the story nowhere. It began the Easter. I drove 40 minutes each way, twice, because I forgot the roles my mother-in-law specifically requested, and my husband said it would be easier if I just went back. My sister-in-law lived 4 minutes from the store. She was already there. Nobody asked her. I learned my name in that family early. It wasn't the name on my driver's license. It was a quieter one, the one you call when something needs doing, the one that comes with no fanfare and leaves with no thank you. My husband Daniel is a good man in most of the ways that count. He loves me genuinely. He remembers my coffee order and kills spiders without being asked, and holds my hand during takeoff even when he's tired. But he grew up in a family where his mother's comfort was the organizing principle of every room, and 20 years of that kind of gravity is hard to escape. When she spoke, the air rearranged itself around her words. When she needed something, everyone recalculated. I had been trying to fit into that rearrangement for 4 years. The wedding was his brother Marcus's. Marcus was 26, marrying a woman named Jenna who I genuinely liked. She was funny and direct, and once told my mother-in-law to her face that the centerpiece idea was a little much. I admired that. I had never once told my mother-in-law anything was a little much. The planning started 8 months out. I was not in the wedding party. I was not asked to be, which was fine. Jenna had her own people, her college roommates, her sister. I understood that. What I did not understand was how I became the unofficial coordinator of everything that didn't fit inside the official wedding party. It started small. Could I call the caterer to confirm the tasting? Could I pick up the bridesmaid dress samples from the boutique downtown? Could I research florists and compile a spreadsheet with pricing? I did all of it. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it would slow down. It did not slow down. By month 5, I was spending 4 to 6 hours every weekend on wedding tasks, addressing envelopes by hand because my mother-in-law wanted it to feel personal, driving to 3 different bakeries to collect cake samples because Jenna was overwhelmed and my mother-in-law said I had such a good eye for these things, sitting on hold with the venue for 45 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break. At no point did anyone ask how I was doing with all of it. At no point did Daniel's other sister-in-law, Renee, get handed a single envelope to address. She had a toddler, so she was excused. She had a demanding job, so she was excused. I had a job too. I had a life too. But somehow mine had more give in it. Somehow mine always bent before anyone else's did. The moment I remember most clearly happened on a Sunday in early March. I was at my mother-in-law's kitchen table with a laptop, 2 notebooks, and a lukewarm cup of coffee nobody had offered to warm up. I was cross-referencing the ceremony timeline with the transportation schedule when my mother-in-law walked through with Renee, laughing about something. They sat down in the living room. The TV went on. Nobody came to check on me. I sat there for a moment, listening to the sound of them relaxing 12 feet away, and I thought about the version of this Sunday I would have had if I hadn't come. I would have gone to the farmer's market with my friend Claire. I would have read the book sitting untouched on my nightstand. I would have made the slow-cooked soup I kept pushing to next weekend. I closed the laptop. Not loudly, I just closed it. I drove home without saying goodbye. Nobody texted to ask where I went. The wedding planning continued. I continued inside it. But something had shifted in me on that Sunday afternoon. Quiet and cellular. The way a bone heals differently after a break. Technically whole, but changed in the structure. The actual break came 6 weeks before the wedding, at a dinner that was supposed to be a casual family check-in. My mother-in-law had made pasta. Everyone was in a good mood. Marcus was talking about the honeymoon, Bali, 2 weeks. They were leaving the day after the reception. Then my mother-in-law set down her fork and said, very casually, the way people say things they've already decided, "So we're thinking the week after the wedding, we'll all do a family beach trip. 7 days. The Outer Banks house is available. It'll be a nice way to decompress after everything." Smiles around the table. Daniel squeezed my hand. "We'll need you to coordinate the grocery run before we arrive," my mother-in-law continued, looking at me. "And Renee's going to need some help with the baby in the evenings so she can actually enjoy herself. Her husband has a work thing. He might not make the whole week." I heard the hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the clock above the stove. "I'm not going," I said. The table went still in the particular way tables go, still when someone says something that doesn't fit the script everyone else was reading from. My mother-in-law's smile stayed on her face, but stopped moving. "What do you mean?" "I mean I won't be at the beach trip." Daniel looked at me, not angry, confused, like I'd said something in a language he'd been sure I didn't speak. "We'd been planning this my mother-in-law started. "I wasn't part of the planning," I said. My voice was level. I was surprised by that. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Well, it was going to be a nice surprise. It would have been a surprise to find out I was expected to run grocery logistics and watch a baby on a vacation I didn't agree to. The silence had a texture to it. Marcus looked at his plate. Jenna, across from me, looked at me with something I later recognized as recognition. My mother-in-law's voice cooled by several degrees. "We're family. That's what family does." "Family also asks," I said. I pushed my chair back slowly. I picked up my glass and my phone. I looked at Daniel, who was still deciding what expression to wear, and I said quietly, "I'll be in the car." I didn't slam the door. I didn't need the drama. I just left. In the car, I sat in the dark for a few minutes, not crying, not shaking, just breathing, the way you breathe after setting down something heavy you've been carrying long enough that you forgot it wasn't part of your body. Daniel came out 15 minutes later. He got in the passenger seat and we sat there together for a moment without talking. "You could have said something earlier," he said finally. Not an accusation, exactly. More like a man trying to find solid ground. "I've been saying something for 4 years," I said. I just stopped saying it quietly. He didn't answer that. But he didn't argue with it either. That night, after we got home, I sat at my desk. Just me and the lamp and the hum of the street outside. I opened a browser and I typed slowly, like I was writing something down I'd been meaning to write for a long time: solo travel. Off-season. Somewhere warm. The cursor blinked. I started looking. The Outer Banks trip was the same week I found a small inn on the coast of Maine. Off-season pricing. Quiet. A town I'd never been to, with a harbor and a used bookstore listed in every travel blog as the kind of place that made you wonder why you didn't live there. I read the reviews slowly. I came alone and left feeling like myself again. Walked 3 miles of beach without seeing another person. Best week I've had in 10 years. I held my credit card for a moment. Then I booked 5 nights. The confirmation email arrived with a small, clean sound. I printed it, folded it once, placed it in the back of my planner, behind all the wedding spreadsheets and vendor contact sheets I'd compiled over 8 months. The feeling was hard to name. Not happiness, exactly. Something quieter, like writing a picture frame that had been slightly crooked for so long you thought it was the wall that was wrong. I didn't tell Daniel immediately. I needed to hold it for a little while first. The following week, the wedding machine continued. I went through the motions, confirmed the shuttle schedule, picked up the guest book from the printer, dropped off a broken boutonniere clip at the florist for repair. I did it all. But I did it like someone finishing a chapter, not someone beginning one. Daniel and I had several more conversations about the beach trip. He tried gentle negotiation. He tried pointing out that his mother had a way of showing love through logistics. I told him I knew that. I told him I also knew that I had been on the receiving end of that love exclusively, without reciprocity for 4 years, and that I was tired. He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said, "Okay, what do you need?" I told him I needed the week in Maine. He looked at the confirmation I showed him. He looked at me. He said, "Okay." He said it like a man who had just understood something he should have understood sooner. He told his mother I had a prior commitment. He didn't elaborate. She pressed. He held the line. That, more than anything, felt like being seen. The week before the wedding arrived, I finished the last items on the coordination list I had never officially been assigned, but had somehow accumulated. The welcome bag assembly, the day of timeline printed and distributed, the vendor tip envelopes organized and labeled. I handed everything off to my mother-in-law in a neat folder. She thanked me with the efficiency of someone receiving a delivery. "I'll see you at the wedding," I said. "And then the beach," she said, with the particular confidence of someone who had never truly heard the word no from me before. I smiled. I didn't correct her. Some conversations are not worth having in a foyer. The wedding was beautiful. Jenna cried during her vows. Marcus laughed through his. I danced with Daniel until my heels came off. For one long evening, I loved this family without qualification. The complicated, loud, food-forward, overscheduled family I had married into. I felt it genuinely. I let myself have it. And then I went home and I finished packing my bag. I had told Daniel the logistics. He knew the dates. He knew I'd be reachable. He was going to the beach house and would tell his mother I wasn't coming when he arrived, not before. There was a reason for that timing and he understood it. A conversation in advance would become a negotiation. A fact upon arrival was just a fact. The morning I left, I was up before sunrise. Daniel was still asleep. I made coffee, sat in the kitchen with the gray pre-dawn light coming through the window, and I wrote him a note, not a long one. Just, "I love you. I'll be back on Thursday. Eat the leftover rice before it turns." I folded it against his coffee mug so he'd find it first thing. I put my bag in the car. The neighborhood was quiet, just birds and the distant sound of a garbage truck somewhere. I drove to the airport in the early light with the windows down, and I thought about the last time I had taken a trip that was entirely mine. I couldn't remember one. I had been somewhere in every trip, present but assigned, there but useful, traveling but never arriving anywhere that was for me. I parked, checked my bag, found my gate. I sent Daniel a text when I boarded, on the plane. "Tell your mother I said congratulations on a beautiful wedding. I mean it." Then I turned my phone to airplane mode and looked out the window as the ground dropped away. The inn was exactly what the photos promised. Small, white wood floors that creaked in a friendly way. My room had a window seat facing the harbor. The woman at the desk handed me a key on a wooden fob and said, "Breakfast is at 8, but we don't judge later sleepers." I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. I put my bag down, sat on the edge of the bed, let the silence of the room settle around me. There was no list. There was no folder. There was nobody in the next room needing anything from me. I took a shower that lasted too long. I ordered dinner at the restaurant down the street, sitting at the bar with a book, eating slowly. The bartender asked if I was in town for long. "A few days," I said. "Just for myself." He nodded like that made perfect sense. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, the notifications came in the way I expected. A cascade of missed calls, then texts arriving in sequence like something being revealed in stages. From my mother-in-law, "Daniel says you're not coming." "I don't understand. We're expecting you." Then, 30 minutes later, "This is very hurtful. We planned this as a family." Then, from my sister-in-law Renee, which surprised me most, "I was really counting on you this week. I don't have help with the baby. This isn't there." Then my mother-in-law again, and the language had sharpened. "You had responsibilities here. You made a commitment. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is selfish, and I want you to know it has affected the whole family's trip." I read them once. I set the phone down on the window seat. I watched a fishing boat move slowly through the harbor, unhurried, pulling a small white wake behind it. I did not feel the guilt I expected to feel. I felt something else, a sadness, clean and honest. not for what I had done, for how long it had taken me to do it. I picked the phone back up. I scrolled to my mother-in-law's thread. I typed one response slowly, choosing the words the way you choose stones for a path, not for beauty, but for where they'd hold weight. I've been part of this family for 4 years, and I've been glad to help with everything I've helped with. But I was never asked about this trip. I was assigned a role in it without a conversation. I needed time that was mine, and I took it. I hope everyone enjoys the week. I mean that. I pressed send. Then I put the phone in my bag. I spent that day walking. The harbor, the bookstore, a bakery where I sat for 2 hours with a coffee and a novel, and nobody required anything of me. I bought a small ceramic lighthouse from a gift shop, the kind of thing I would have talked myself out of on any other trip, because it wasn't practical. I bought it. I wrapped it in my spare shirt and tucked it in my bag. By evening, my mother-in-law had not replied. Daniel had sent 2 texts, one that said she's upset and one that said I told her it was a long time coming. I think I'm finally understanding some things. I held that second message for a long time. Then I replied, "Thank you. That means more than you know." "How's the beach?" He sent a photo of a sunset. Then, "Missing you. But you should be there. There, not here." He understood the difference. On my last morning, I woke up before the alarm. The harbor outside was flat and silver, the tide going out. I made coffee from the small in-room pot and took it to the window seat, and I just sat. No phone, no notebook. Just the cup and the water and the pale morning and the unfamiliar feeling of a day beginning without debt. I thought about who I had been at that kitchen table 8 months ago, cross-referencing spreadsheets while the TV played in the other room. I thought about the girl who watched her birthday envelope disappear under the grocery list. No, that was someone else's story. But I thought about my version of her, the one who drove 40 minutes twice for rolls nobody thanked her for, the one who wrapped 12 people's Christmas presents and wasn't in the photo, the one who had been so afraid of being difficult that she had made herself invisible instead. I thought about what I would say to her. I would say, the people who love you will still love you when you say no, and the ones who only loved what you provided, they were never who you thought they were. I packed my bag in the careful way I'd begun to pack things, as if the act itself was worth doing well. I left a note for housekeeping. I stopped at the bakery one more time and got a coffee for the road. The drive to the airport was quiet. I thought about going home. My apartment, my desk, the book on my nightstand, Daniel, who had been learning something this week too, the conversation with my mother-in-law that was still ahead, which I did not dread as much as I once would have. On the plane home, I opened my notebook and wrote 2 lines. Being easy to take advantage of is not the same as being kind. The difference is, who decides? I closed the notebook. The plane lifted. Below, the harbor and the town and the 5 days I had given entirely to myself grew small and then vanished into the blue. When I landed, Daniel picked me up. We didn't say much on the drive. He put his hand on mine on the center console, and I let it stay there. At home, he made dinner while I unpacked. I put the ceramic lighthouse on my desk, next to my lamp. It looked like it belonged there. Later, my mother-in-law called. I answered, which surprised her, I think. The conversation was not easy, but I stayed level. I told her I valued being part of the family. I told her I was not available to be its invisible infrastructure. I told her that going forward, I was happy to help with things when I was asked directly, given reasonable notice, and thanked like a person. I told her those were not punishments. They were just the way things would work now. She said I was being dramatic. I said I understood why it felt that way to her. I said I hoped she'd think about it. Then I said goodnight, and I meant it without bitterness, and I hung up. Daniel was in the doorway. I looked at him. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it, like someone who stopped carrying something she was never asked to pick up. He came and sat next to me on the bed. We sat there for a while without talking. The apartment was quiet. The lighthouse was small and white on my desk. Maybe his mother will come around. Maybe she'll tell the story of the daughter-in-law who abandoned the family beach trip, who put herself first, who was selfish and difficult and changed. Let her tell it. The version I'll tell is simpler. I stopped organizing my life around the comfort of people who had never once organized theirs around mine. The kettle was on the stove. I could hear it starting to hiss from the kitchen. I got up to pour the water. Outside the window, the city was ordinary and mine. If you've ever taken back something that was always yours to keep, tell me, where did you go? And was it the first time you finally felt like you'd arrived? There's a pattern that forms slowly, the way water shapes stone, not in one dramatic rush, but in years of small, unremarkable pressure. I didn't see it while it was happening to me. I only saw it when I finally stepped away and looked back from a distance. I had spent 4 years making myself useful in ways no one asked me to stop being. I showed up. I organized. I drove the extra miles and stayed the extra hours and folded myself into the gaps of other people's plans without ever asking whether my own plans deserve the same space. And because I did it willingly, quietly, without complaint, everyone around me concluded that this was simply who I was. Not a choice I was making, a nature I had. That's the cost of suppressing your own needs for too long. Eventually, the people who benefit from your silence start to believe the silence is permanent. What I've come to understand is that there's nothing noble about exhausting yourself for people who have never once asked how you're doing. Sacrifice that goes unacknowledged isn't love. It's a transaction where only one side is paying. And the longer you maintain it, the more invisible the debt becomes, until the person carrying it starts to disappear along with it. The harder truth is this: I allowed it, not because I was weak, but because I had confused endurance with virtue. I thought that being the one who could handle it, who never caused trouble, who always found a way, I thought that made me good. What it actually made me was convenient. There's a difference, and learning to see it is its own kind of courage. The week I spent alone in Maine wasn't just rest, it was evidence. Evidence that I could exist outside the architecture of other people's expectations and still be fully, quietly, adequately myself. Nobody needed anything from me that week. The world did not collapse. The people I loved were inconvenienced, not destroyed, and I came home with something I hadn't carried in years, a clear sense of where I ended and everyone else's demands began. That clarity is what changed the conversation with my mother-in-law. Not anger. Not rehearsed arguments, just the steady, unshakable knowledge of what I was willing to offer and what I was not. Strength that comes from that place doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be consistent. The people who genuinely love you will adjust. They may push back first, and that discomfort is real, and it's allowed to be hard. But real connection survives honesty. What doesn't survive it was never really connection to begin with. It was dependency dressed in the language of family. I am still learning. I still catch myself reaching for the familiar shape of overgiving, still feel the old pull to smooth things over before they wrinkle. But I recognize it now. And recognition is the first act of every change that actually lasts. If there is one thing this whole season of my life taught me, it is that the most important boundary you will ever draw is the one between who you genuinely are and who other people have simply gotten used to you being. Redrawing that line is not betrayal. It is the most honest thing you can do, for them, and far more importantly, for yourself.